Welcome back to This Week in Film. Right? We're being attacked by dinosaurs.
No! No!
This episode's not about Jurassic Park.
Thank God.
I'm Nick Panunto, joined by RaysRayndomRayquest and Tony LeBoy.
Yo!
He's back.
This is the weekly podcast where I should have done this at the beginning. This is the weekly podcast where we get together and talk about the movies that we watched over the past 7 days. How are you doing, fellas?
Great.
I'm doing fantastic.
I'm good too.
Wow, just good.
Just good.
All right.
That
well,
does.
brings
that's
the mood
good.
down a little bit.
All right. Well,
Who goes first?
who's gonna go first? I'll go first.
All right.
Ray, what did you see this week?
I watched a movie called High Rise,
Tell us about it.
directed by Ben Wheatley, starring Tom Hiddleston, Jeremy Irons,
Jeremy's
Sienna Miller, and Luke Evans.
Iron.
So first things first, before we get into this film, it's a newer movie, 2015. What do you guys think of Tom Hiddleston?
You know, it's funny you bring him up because moments ago, the Today Show was on, and apparently he's dating Taylor Swift.
All right, so that even makes more sense.
Really?
So he's
Okay.
on the fast track right now to becoming like a huge star.
Absolutely. Yes.
He's going to be
I see
James
that.
Bond if Daniel Craig turns down the $1 billion.
Right,
they
right. So
offer
that's the
him.
big
Yeah.
rumor. He's going to become James Bond. He's slowly. I didn't realize that Loki was like his first like major role.
Yeah.
I
Really?
thought he was in like other stuff before that. Loki, not Avengers. Thor was his third movie that he ever acted in.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was just like his biggest.
Right. Yeah. So
Holy crap.
Yeah, that
Wow.
shocked me as well.
There we go.
I just figured he's one of those guys that's been around in Britain for.
That's exactly what I thought
Good
too.
first movie.
So yeah, if you look at his IMDb page, Thor is his third acting credit.
Wow.
So that's one thing, and it just seems like he's getting more and more roles given to him and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan of this guy.
No, I like
There's something about him that rubs me the wrong way. I don't know what it is. Like they're trying to make him into this tough dude, but he's like a pretty boy.
Yeah, no, they definitely want him to be, like you said, they want him to be a tough guy, and it doesn't work for him.
I watched that AMC show, The Night Manager, the miniseries that he was in.
How was that?
And it was good, but yeah, the same thing. Like something about him in that role just like didn't sit with me.
Mhm.
So anyway, not the biggest fan of Tom Hiddleston.
Okay.
So I'm going to start that out. So this movie is very different. It's very strange. I would compare it to. Have you guys ever seen Snowpiercer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great movie.
So this is
awesome.
Snowpiercer in a high-rise building.
Oh, well, now I got to see it.
But not
Buildings
nearly.
on a train track.
Yeah, exactly.
They put the building on its side.
And they slide it around the world.
It's not nearly as good as Snowpiercer, which I liked. I didn't love, but it was I liked it a lot more than this film.
Okay.
So basically, the premise is this guy Jeremy Irons is an architect, and he builds this high rise in London, or on the outskirts of London. The movie takes place in the 70s for some weird reason. There's really no reason for it to take place in the 70s, but it does.
So that they can't have cell phones?
Yeah, I guess that might actually be the reason.
So is it a good period piece in that way, or do you see like?
No, there's like no like they. I don't even know. The only reason I know why it takes place in the 70s is because it says it in like the description. Like
That guy's wearing an Apple Watch.
right. There's no other reason why it should. Anyway, so this guy decides to build this high rise in the outskirts of London, with the idea of that like these people will never need to leave it. So like there's a supermarket in it, there's a school in it, there's a world-class gym in it. Basically anything that you would need to live, but these people still have jobs, like outside jobs.
Right.
Tom Hiddleston plays a guy. He's a doctor, and his sister just died, and they never really get into why or what happened. There's hints about stuff, but they never really tell you why. Basically, he's had a traumatic experience, and he wants to leave wherever home he was in before. Apparently, he lived in the city in London.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to leave there and go start anew. So he moves into this new high rise. And immediately as he gets there, he realizes that there's tension between, like, the top couple floors are, like, where, like, the rich and, like, the well-to-do live. And then the lower you go in the high-rise, like, the worse it gets.
Okay.
Just like Snowpiercer.
Sure.
So he moves in. He's kind of, like, in the middle. And what ends up happening is he immediately, gears toward the people that are less wealthy. But you can tell that the rich realize that he's a doctor and realize that he has history of being upper echelon, and are trying to recruit him to be in their part. So he's kind of getting tugged either way.
Okay.
Luke Evans plays a guy named Richard Wilder, who is definitely on the lower end of the spectrum, and he can see that there's something fishy going on in this high rise where the people that are on the higher floors definitely live a better life. They definitely get treated better. Sometimes the electricity shuts off in the lower levels, and the higher levels it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Crimes are committed, and the police never show up. And everything is really hush hush. So he's a conspiracy theorist basically. He's something's going on.
Does this exist in post-apocalyptic Britain, or are they just trying to lock people into the building?
Yeah, see that's the thing. It's not post-apocalyptic. It's regular Britain, but it's definitely got a future feel to it. A lot of stuff's not explained. That's one thing I really didn't like about the movie. The biggest problem I had with it is they're setting this whole thing up where basically there's going to be a clash between the higher class and the lower class in this building. And they get to that point, and instead of that being a big part of the movie, they explain this clash with a 2-minute montage.
Oh.
And that's it. And then all of a sudden we flash forward and the building's in complete disarray. People are fighting, everything's broken. There's the grocery store's been raided. There's people that have died that just they die in the montage, and you never see why they die or how they die, blah blah.
Does Kenny Loggins do the montage at least?
I really wish it was. I actually watched it with subtitles. I watch whenever I watch a movie that's heavily accented, I watch the subtitles because a lot of times I can't understand what they're saying.
Right, yeah, I do the same.
And they did say what song it was, and I did Google it.
Yeah,
and it was a pretty good. I forget. I didn't write down what it was called.
So was it a good montage? You think? Or?
Yes, it was a good montage.
You just wanted to see more of it. It was not a montage. It was
a major part of the movie that didn't need to be explained with a montage. You're waiting the first hour of the movie. You're all right, this is going to be cool. They're going to fight each other. This is going to be, and there's hints of it's going to be really violent. And the violent scenes are in the montage. But like I said, it's quick, it's fast.
As soon as you brought it up and what it was about, I started thinking. You ever see The Raid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's immediately where my mind
went.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what this is like at all. It's more, the movie spends more time talking about classes in society and how we live and how stuff that we need to survive. And you start seeing that these people stop going to their jobs and they start just living in this building, and that's all they care about, and they gossip about immediately. Once Tom Hiddleston gets to the building, he immediately starts having a relationship with this one woman, and a day later, guy's oh, so you're banging what's her face?
Mm-hmm.
And he's how do you know about that? He's everybody knows everything in here. So it's it's basically a city inside a building. But I just didn't like the direction they went with it. Like I said, the whole montage thing was weird, and then the end of it, or not the end of it, but the last 40 minutes is spent just making social commentaries about stuff, and there's no resolution for things, and they try to get Tom Hiddleston go against the lower class, and he clashes back. I don't want to ruin it for anybody who wants to see it, and I definitely recommend seeing it. It's beautifully shot. The cinematography is awesome. Like I said, the music's good. It does have a cool tone. It was just the story, just I wanted something different. Now I understand that the director and the writers are going for, it's actually based off a novel. They're going for something and they accomplish it, but I thought it could have been way better if they spent more time on the clash between these two parts of the building rather than just the aftermath, which just wasn't as interesting at all.
So do you think it was because the director wanted to do more of a character study as opposed to a violent action flick?
It definitely could have had more action.
Where Snowpiercer is an action movie with dramatic elements, this is a drama with some action.
And maybe not everything can be something else. Everything wants to be its own thing.
Right.
I just didn't think it worked for this movie. So, but But I was very interested in it because I saw the trailer last year, and I think it played at a bunch of festivals. And I read a review on it that was very good, and I've been waiting for it to come out. So it's on Netflix now if anyone wants to check it out. But yeah, check it out. High Rise.
Okay.
Not bad.
All right.
Tony.
Yeah.
What did you see?
Gotta get the timing down here. I watched Insomnia this week. The Al Pacino, Robin Williams, Christopher Nolan directed this flick. It came out in 2002. It takes place in Alaska in a little fishing town. So basically, what it comes down to is this 17-year-old girl gets murdered in Alaska. So they bring in LAPD detective Will Dormer, played by Al Pacino, and for some reason he's being investigated by internal affairs. So an old colleague from Alaska calls him in, and he's like, "This is the best guy. This is the guy who's gonna solve this 17-year-old girl's murder." So he comes in, even though he's got like a grizzled past and he's under investigation. He comes in to solve this murder. And his partner reveals to him that internal affairs has been breathing down his neck, and he's going to have to turn in Al Pacino. And Al Pacino, obviously doesn't like that. So Robin Williams plays this. He's an author, I believe. Yeah, he plays an author. And so, meanwhile, Al Pacino and this dude set a trap. His partner set a trap for the murderer. He does his investigation. And they set a trap for him. And meanwhile, they go to this. They set the trap, and it's in the woods, and there's a thick, dense fog. So they see the murderer. They spring the trap, and the murderer disappears into the fog. So there's this real tense scene, and Al Pacino thinks he sees him in the fog. Everybody kind of goes their own way. He thinks he sees the murderer in the fog, and he shoots him. It turns out to be his partner, and his partner looks at him and thinks that Al Pacino did it on purpose because of the internal affairs investigation. So
I don't remember any of this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I remember the fog.
I was gonna say one thing that I remember, but keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. So his partner dies, and Al Pacino kind of panics, so he makes it look like the murderer killed him. So Hilary Swank is also in it.
Hilary Swank.
Yeah. She's also in it, and she plays some young, impressionable cop who is enamored by Al Pacino. So Al Pacino and gang do some more investigating, and they find out that this girl read a lot of Robin Williams' books. So somehow find Robin Williams, and now we come to a pause because Robin Williams plays the same character that he's played in two other productions. 1 Hour Photo, if you've ever seen that movie, right. Same guy. And there was a long SVU episode, same character.
Really, Robin Williams was an SVU episode.
It's a great.
It's
a great
wasn't
episode.
He a rapist in that, and I'm like, oh yeah, every episode.
Of course, it's SVU. But yeah, he plays the same dramatic, very dark. Anytime he plays these guys, he just goes really dark and creepy, and
when Robin Williams
totally
goes
works.
Dramatic but without the beard.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tony.
Anyway, so yeah, the murder of his partner starts to weigh on Al Pacino, and he's doing the investigation, and Al Pacino starts toying with him a la Kevin Spacey in Seven kind of type
right.
shit. Where it turns out that Robin Williams ends up being the killer, reveals that Al Pacino figures it out, he reveals it to him, and the climax in the middle of the movie, Al Pacino goes on a boat with Robin Williams.
Right. Yes.
They start.
I remember the boat. That's what I was about to say.
They start talking, and Robin Williams agrees to meet with him because he's like, I know you did it, and you know I did it, whatever. So they start talking, and he's like, I know you killed your partner because I was there and I saw it. And he's like, well, I know you killed that girl. And the whole time, Robin Williams is recording it. So now Al Pacino has admitted to killing his partner, so he's kind of holding it over his head. So what Robin Williams pitches is that, hey, you help me, I'll help you. You will pin it on her abusive boyfriend. You can get out of town. I'll go back to my life, and then this can all be over. And Al Pacino kind of like realizes, like, all right, well, I really don't have a choice. So he kind of goes along with it. And then he starts getting an attack of conscience when Robin Williams is in the interrogation room, revealing it to the rest of the cop gang. So, blah blah blah. The rest of the story, it's a very slow moving movie, and the crux of it is basically that since they're in Alaska during the summer solstice, it's always light. So, compounded with his guilt of killing his partner, the light seeping into his room is driving Al Pacino insane. So he can't sleep because he has insomnia. So yeah, whatever. So Al Pacino descends into madness, ends up the whole climax at the end, where he meets Robin Williams, and they basically, ends up duking it out, and that was basically it. It was to me, to sum it all up, to me it did not watch like a Christopher Nolan movie at all. There was not to me there wasn't that, like, he has a very like real sense of like darkness and mystery about his movies, and this just seemed to me like kind of like just a Lifetime movie almost. It was just very blandly acted.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
like that's great. The Lifetime movie comparison. Yeah, felt like
it was just very bland and yeah.
Yeah, I remember I watched this movie when I was very young, and I remember I didn't like it, and then when Christopher Nolan started to become more mainstream, I guess maybe with like The Dark Knight and Inception, like I guess what was it, like 5?
Did he get Batman after this movie?
Oh yeah.
But I mean, like, he got this Batman was the next movie he did, or did he have one?
I don't know about that. But after like he started becoming more mainstream, I'm like, oh yeah, didn't he direct that Insomnia movie? I'm like, I remember not liking that, and I went back and watched it again, and I didn't like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
It was like you look at the cast and you look at the synopsis,
right?
Yeah.
And
you're like,
there's no way.
Why didn't I like this?
Yeah.
And then I watched it again. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't.
Even right now, hearing Tony describe it, I'm like, oh, I must love this movie. I must have been in a bad mood. But,
right.
Like, I remember watching it and just being so bored.
No, you see, like, everything that I described, it sounds like it would be awesome, but the way they play it is just so bland, and even the twist and turns, it's just like it just doesn't hit. And going back to the timeline of things here, Memento came out. Oh, first he did Following, like his debut flick.
Right.
Then he did Memento, which was a great movie.
Great movie.
Insomnia, and then he got Batman Begins.
That's crazy that they gave him Batman after
Prestige,
Insomnia. But I guess Insomnia did really well. I think I remember it doing very well. I worked at Blockbuster at the time, and we had a whole section devoted to it. So that means it did pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, Robin Williams was probably just coming up. What was it coming off? Jumanji?
Jumanji was like 96.
I didn't know they still have Blockbusters. You see that video of the guy in Alaska? They still have Blockbusters in Alaska.
What?
Oh,
yeah, and a guy just posted a video the other day of him walking through one.
Oh. I still know my employee number. It's always...
I didn't know that they still existed. I guess in remote places where, like...
I guess if you had a franchise,
yeah.
Why would you...
Are the late fees national? Like, if you went there, like if I went there and tried to like use my Blockbuster...
The late fees were total BS. Like if you never paid your late fee, you would get a letter in the mail from like a collection agency. The collection agency didn't exist. It was just like a scare tactic to get you to come in and pay.
Damn, I really wish I would have known that.
Yeah.
Like I mean, eventually, if you have a late fee, you just won't get to rent anything else.
Right.
But you're not going to get like a credit hit or anything like that.
Trade secrets.
So hop in your time machine, rent 10 new releases, and don't return them by midnight on the second day.
Oh, you know what? It wasn't Alaska. It was Texas is where it was. But I think they said there are ones in Alaska.
Well, never mind then.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah, I did not like Insomnia.
Yeah, to summarize, Insomnia put me to sleep.
You've been working on that all night.
Yes. Oh, here's what happened. So he did 1 hour photo, then he did Death to Smoochie, and then he did Insomnia, all in 2002. So big year for him.
Death to Smoochie is a good movie.
I've never seen it.
It's a really dark.
He plays like
really
the
black
mascot,
comedy.
right?
Yeah. All right. So last week, Ray, you talked the new Point Break.
Right.
My brother was in town this week, and he's a big fan of our show. Hi, Matt. And he was saying how he had never seen the original Point Break.
Blasphemy.
So we watched that.
Nice.
Of course.
That's fantastic.
I have a lot of notes. And we're going to go through.
It's like, what are you doing while you're watching the movie?
Anyway, but if you haven't seen Point Break or its remake, Keanu Reeves is a FBI agent.
Yeah. That was pretty good.
And he's tasked, him and his partner Gary Busey are tasked with solving this series of bank robberies that Gary Busey believes are being committed by surfers in the greater Los Angeles area. And basically the story's about Keanu and Gary Busey trying to take down Patrick Swayze and his gang of bandits. Bodie.
We're talking Johnny Utah, Angelo Pappas, and Bodhisattva.
So when the movie was over, my brother had a huge smile on his face, and he was saying, "That was great." He said, "I really liked that. It was the best kind of terrible," which is a perfect description of the movie.
Right.
It's an excellent example of what you can do when you have a great director with charismatic actors, well done, exciting action sequences, and a terrible script with terrible acting to go with your charismatic actors. The movie also exists in the 1991 post-glam rock era. The music in the movie I don't care for. And everyone in the movie that isn't an FBI agent looks like they just walked off the set of Extreme's More Than Words video. And there's no way that they could make this movie even 2 years later.
Yeah, it's like what do they say? It's lost in, or
it's trapped in
trapped
time.
in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years later is when the Seattle grunge sound
Right.
like swept over. And Anthony Kiedis, we mentioned last week, is in this movie, and he plays one of the bad guys. And I looked at the dates, and Red Hot Chili Peppers, he's the lead singer of Red Hot Chili Peppers. They like Blood Sugar Sex Magic didn't come out till after this movie came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Huh.
so like this movie
that.
came out in this, I think the summer or spring, and that movie came out in that album came out in late 91.
That's pretty cool.
So he was just like, I guess, real big in Southern California,
Right, yeah.
like that West Coast, and he's in LA, so he was just
you probably knew somebody or
yeah.
something.
Well, that's why him and Flea are in a bunch of random early 90s
Yeah, Flea's in it
movies.
too,
yeah.
Who's Flea?
He
Wait.
plays one of the other. You know the scene where they go and raid that house and
Yeah.
like Flea's one of those guys.
Is he?
Is he?
Yeah, isn't he one of those?
I know
guys?
Anthony Kiedis is one of them.
Anthony
I didn't
Kiedis
know.
is definitely in there.
Flea's in another movie that's like this, where he's like gets in a beach fight.
By the way, you want to talk about a great sequence? That sequence when they raid that house.
Oh yeah. That's
Absolutely.
That's I think number 9 on my list.
Yeah.
But so anyway, like even the Chili Peppers like funk rock sound hadn't even really swept America off its feet. And the movie really feeds on the idea of the dangerous California surfer dude, which I remember was a thing, like these Southern California beach guys.
Right,
like it
don't
wasn't.
mess with them.
They weren't like hippie dudes. They were like,
Stay off
"This
my
is-
wave.
This is our beach, man. Get off my wave."
What's the one guy's name? Warchild?
War
Back
Child.
off, War Child.
then Swayze has like a different. The movie is over 2 hours long, and it feels every minute of it. Like I kind of thought it would fly by, and it doesn't. Like it feels as long as it is, but they cram every minute. They don't waste anything. And then the raid sequence where they raid Anthony Kiedis's drug house or
Right.
whatever is a fantastic action sequence.
Oh yeah.
For the following reasons.
There's boobs.
There are boobs.
Yep.
There's a hot girl in the shower, bathing suit girl who answers the door, who time does not make that look any better. But also that whole sequence is a total bust for Busey and Gary Busey and Keanu Reeves characters, where they totally raid the wrong house. And
Right.
Tom Sizemore's the DEA agent. And there are no consequences for Gary Busey and Keanu Reeves. They're basic. Like 2 scenes later, Keanu's like, "I'm right this time. I know it. You gotta believe me." And then they just continue with their operation.
My favorite. Just to pause on Tom Sizemore's character in that movie, because he really just comes in. He's like, "You freaking cowboys! Like, my wife left me. I've got to stay at Ramada." Like
I
this
wanna
guy
wear
was
my
deep
hair
undercover
like this.
for 5 years, and they just blow it for him. Ruined his life.
Oh my god.
That raid sequence is one of the great examples of very good direction in the movie. There's no music throughout the scene. It's very tense. There's a lot of close-ups, like just headshots,
Right.
or a close-up of guns or whatever they're
They
going
do
after.
the lawnmower. Isn't the lawnmower
Yeah.
going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lot of quick cuts, very clear sound, and the point of view in the scene changes to like every character that's involved in it at one point. But you totally understand where you are throughout the scene until the gunfight breaks out, and then like as the viewer are also lost in like I'm going to say fog of war, because they're all shooting at each other.
Right.
But it's like this great action sequence that in somebody else, like Catherine Bigelow directed it, who's the director of Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30.
Right.
And I think this was her first major film, and many of the
Former wife of James Cameron.
Yeah.
and many of the sequences of the movie have that similar thing. The movie starts out when Keanu Reeves is first introduced. There's this very long Steadicam walk through like this FBI cubicles and offices and stuff, and you don't even realize that it's going on. It's just a very well directed movie, and then a lot of great stunts in the movie. For instance, at the end when Keanu jumps out of the plane,
One of the most ridiculous scenes
without
ever.
a parachute, yeah.
F it.
Yeah, my brother, we're watching the scene, and Keanu or Swayze leaves the airplane. He's like, "See you later," and Keanu's like, "Oh no!" and then he jumps. My brother starts dying, going, "He jumped out of the plane." And then they cut to the stuntman who's like flying towards Swayze, and you could totally tell he's got a parachute on.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing a making of segment or like history's best stunts or whatever, and that ranked very high at the time because the stuntman, they couldn't just send a guy out of a plane.
Right.
Like the goal of the stunt was for the stuntman to hit the Swayze stuntman, and they were going to float to the ground together. But if there was a problem,
He had the back.
he had a backup chute, but it was underneath his shirt. Like Keanu's wearing this purple shirt. So if there was a problem, the stuntman would have to lose the shirt and then pull the chute. So it's a pretty harrowing stunt. And much like all the other action sequences in the movie, it's shot in a very exciting way. One thing that I did notice is that whenever Swayze and Keanu are supposed to be flying or whatever, the camera's just always pointed straight up, so it just looks like the sky is behind them. It's like, like when they're in the airplane, all the shots are from real low, so that when you're looking out the airplane windows, you can't tell that they're not really in an airplane
Not flying.
or not really flying. But yeah, Point Break is an excellent example of a unbelievably bad, unbelievably great movie.
I do have to say, while the raid scene in the house is top notch, I have to say that I think the when they have the stakeout in front of the bank, when they first are staking out the ex-presidents, they know they're going to hit this bank, and they're waiting for him. And that chase scene that culminates, the huge car chase scene with Gary Busey and Keanu chasing them. They get to the gas station, they torch the car, then it goes on foot, like
running through the backyard.
Running through he throws a damn pit bull in his face.
He takes the time to pick up a dog.
Yeah, and then it ends in the it ends in like that what is it? What is that? Because they use it in Terminator 2. They use the same place. I don't even know what it is.
That's the L.A. River.
Yeah,
and they do it in Greece too, don't they? Do it in Greece
That's right. That's where they race.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh
right,
man.
yeah.
But yeah, and that's where he sprains his knee and he shoots in the air.
Right. And they try to recreate
He loves
that
him so much
in the new one.
He can't shoot him.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Hot Fuzz, you should watch Hot Fuzz because
They make fun of that.
Hot. Have you seen Hot Fuzz, Tony?
Yes.
Hot Fuzz is every cop movie ever made deliberately, and it's procedural. Like it starts out as one kind of movie and goes along the way. Anyway, check out Hot Fuzz.
Fantastic.
It's great. You'll never watch the Keanu shooting into the air scene. I missed. You don't miss. I've never seen you miss at all. I missed.
But the one thing too that a lot of people don't know or that don't think about is the Fast and the Furious is essentially this movie, just with cars.
Oh,
and,
You're right.
And,
You're right. Yeah.
Them like robbing. What are they robbing? Like big trucks or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the same plot.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. The scene you're talking about, Tony, where Swayze lights the gas pump on fire.
Yeah, the gas
I
pump.
feel like that's where the movie takes like a not so great turn. Like that's where the Swayze character, like all of a sudden, is a totally different character.
Right.
Because the reason that they never shoot anybody or hurt anybody is because Bodhi abhors violence.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden he's like, well, you got to do what you got to do. And
Keanu pushed him to the edge.
Yeah, they pushed each other to the edge.
Yeah, but you got to realize though, he never killed anybody in that scene. He makes like he could have shot the guy they stole the car from. He makes him leave. Like they really were just doing what they had to do.
Right.
Yeah, and actually, at one point, one of the bank robber guys, I think it's not River Phoenix, the guy who looks like River Phoenix but isn't River Phoenix.
Oh no! I know who you're talking about.
He calls him Little Brother, so I don't know if that's his name or if that's just like a
not
friend thing.
Roach.
Name?
Yeah. He's got a straight bead on Keanu with his machine gun, and Bodhi knocks his gun away. He's like, "No, don't shoot!"
Right.
But when does Bodhi know that it's Keanu? When he's laying there in the river, or while he's chasing him?
I think he knows even before that.
Oh, really?
I think I think he realizes it when he knocks the gun away. I think that's the point. I think that's the first time that he ever sees Johnny Utah as a cop, because the whole time they think he's a lawyer dude, whatever. I think that's the first time that Bodhi ever sees him as a cop.
And Keanu loves him so much, he can't shoot him.
Also underrated character in that movie, John McKinley, the head of the FBI.
Yeah.
Just fantastic.
He's great, yeah.
Ripping people's heads off.
Yes, the surfboard bothers me. And yes, you bother me.
Gary Busey just decks him.
Yeah, he just lays into Busey that entire movie until he gets decked in the face. It's awesome.
It's
such an over the top movie, but it's perfect. It's just so perfectly done.
I could literally go on about this movie for another hour.
Yeah, me too. But let's not. Let's get to last week's Ray's Random Request and Tony's Third Degree. So Ray, your question was favorite action sequence?
Yes.
And Tony, let's do Ray's responses first. So Ray, Matt L., who lives in Chicago, he said his favorite action sequence is the church scene from Kingsman, Secret Service,
That's a good
which
one.
is just a great action scene.
Oh, yeah.
Or I feel like me and Matt are the only two people who ever saw this movie, but the movie Ultraviolet.
Yeah, is that with Charlize Theron?
I think it's Mila Jovovich.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember.
Right.
But the beginning of that movie was so good. Like, we went expecting to see like a terrible, terrible movie,
Right.
and we got that. But the beginning of the movie was so great that we were like, oh my God, why isn't anybody watching? Oh, it's really bad. But the first 5 minutes of that movie are unbelievable. If you can watch the beginning of Ultraviolet and then turn it off, you'll know when to turn it off. It doesn't get any better again. At Wilmington Dan on Twitter, he's friend of the show, Dan. He says the opening sequence from X-Men 2 with Nightcrawler, which totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that might be my favorite answer. He says it's a great use of surround sound, by the way, if you're testing out your system. Barb F, she says her favorite action scene is the Steve McQueen car chase in San Francisco from the movie Bullet, which I haven't seen. It's like on my list of things that I just never get around to.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
Liz G says the zero gravity fight scene in Inception.
Awesome one, yeah.
Yeah.
Through the hotel or whatever.
Yeah. And then Jill P, she says the club scene from John Wick.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Another Keanu. If you haven't seen John Wick, you should see it.
Awesome.
And then Tony, your third degree from last week was what's a movie where a typecasted actor breaks out of his
breaks
mold?
out of his mold. Yep.
Right. So Liz says on that, she says Betty White and the Golden Girls, which I don't understand, Liz.
She actually explained it to me, and I don't understand it either.
But when I first read her comment, I thought she said the zero gravity Betty White fight scene in Inception.
Okay.
I guess the fact that but wasn't Betty White the same character in the Golden Girls that she's been trying to do? Because recently they've been trying to put Betty White in comedy films and be very raunchy. Wasn't she
Hot
kind
in
of that?
Cleveland.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about Betty White before
I don't really know
the
much
Golden
about
Girls,
the
but she's been an actress since
We'll
she was
take your word
in her
for it.
20s at least.
Right.
So, but I know that she tried to change up her role because remember we were saying she was in Lake Placid. She was the foul-mouthed lady who fed
Right.
Betty White says the F word in that movie, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I feel like she's just being herself at this point.
Right. So then Jill P says her typecasted actor pick would be Jim Carrey's breakout in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh, yeah. That's a very good one.
And then Wilmington Dan, he also picked Jim Carrey, but from The Truman Show.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, he really made a turn. I think with Eternal Sunshine, he really showed his chops there. I would also say he took another turn.
The number 23.
Not such a great movie, but I mean, I admired his attempt.
The Majestic was also terrible.
Yeah. Well.
Oh my God, the Majestic. I also got a response from another Nick,
No way.
and he said basically the entire Mad Max Fury Road for my question.
Oh,
All
sure.
right,
It's
yeah.
basically just one
Just
big
one long
Yeah,
scene.
action
yeah.
scene.
one long
Yeah.
action scene.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Nick. It wasn't me. And all right, so guys, it was a great success with both questions last week. Let's do it again.
Oh boy.
Ray, because you look more prepared than Tony right now. What's your Ray's random request for this week?
All right, so this week it doesn't really go. It kind of goes with my movie. But me and Tony were talking earlier tonight about Hateful Eight, and how that the movie pretty much takes place in one setting. You guys, both of you haven't seen it, right?
I haven't seen it
I
yet.
haven't
No.
seen it yet.
And then the movie I watched, High Rise, for the most part takes place in this high-rise building. I mean, there's a bunch of different parts of the building, so it feels bigger than just a room in Hateful Eight.
Right.
But I want our listeners to think about a movie that they liked or that they disliked that took place in one setting,
Nice.
in one
Okay.
spot.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, I can't. The Hateful Eight's the first thing now I can think about because it's a recent movie.
Right.
But yeah,
Oh, I'm
that's my
thinking
question.
hard. All right, Tony. What is your Tony's third degree? I was buying you time.
No, yeah, I'm going to jump on Ray's question because we're part of the same conversation we had. What is your favorite movie that is largely driven by dialogue. Of course, we were talking about Quentin Tarantino, and he has just some of the most witty dialogue in his movies ever in cinematic history. So just based on dialogue between characters, what is your favorite scene or complete movie? Like, first thing that I can think of, like a movie like this would be Clerks. Like, that whole movie is just witty dialogue, and that's just vintage Kevin Smith. So what is your favorite movie that's largely driven just by dialogue between characters?
I gotta get a good answer for that. Alec Baldwin's scene from Glengarry Glen Ross.
Oh, beautiful.
Scene drives the entire movie.
Coffees for closers.
That's where I said there'll always be closing earlier today that I don't think anyone but you guys got.
It was brilliant.
Everyone liked it. I'm very popular.
Everybody praised it.
Sam wrote it down. Great. Yeah, great questions, guys.
Get some great answers.
Let's get some great
Guys
answers.
and girls.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Lads and lasses. And
All right, so that brings us to the new exciting plug segment. Ray, do you have any plugs this week?
I don't.
Oh. I was really looking forward to that firefighter money from your buddies firefighters.
I can plug it again.
Sure, if you want to, I guess. I don't know. Did they pay this week? Tony, do you have any plugs?
Well, let him do his firefighter plug.
Well, I gotta find it.
Okay.
I'm buying him time. Perhaps you have a comic book you'd like us all to read.
Boy Zero, wherever comic books are sold.
The graphic novel by Charles Chester?
That's correct. The
Okay.
same.
Chief Fire and Rescue for all your industrial firefighting needs. Visit chief-fire.com. You
need a fire truck?
You have a fire? We'll snuff it out.
Yes.
I don't know if that's an official tagline or not, but
I like it. I'll say hi to my son Alex and my daughter Natalie. And if you're listening to us on the Podcast Radio Network, it must be after 10:30 at night on Wednesday night, which is when we're on. If you're interested in the Podcast Radio Network, it's every evening on if you go to podcastradionetwork.net, you can find all the shows that we do there. Let's Talk Flicks gives us a great lead-in every week. It's a great show where they talk about, just new stuff with movies every week. And I think that's it for podcastradionetwork.net. Check them out, or the Crikey app, KRY. But if you want to find our back catalog of exciting episodes, you can find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and as always, thisweekinfilmpodcast.net. No, thisweekinfilmpodcast.com. We don't have the .net.
It's been a long day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, you guys have anything else? The Blood Gulch has been playing for like 10 minutes now. Last week, the song had to start over again.
we should just record that, us singing Blood Gulch.
If that's the end of the reel, we'll see
We need
you
to find something new there.
At the movies.
next. But you can't beat perfection. We'll see you next week in film. What?